this experiment started. In addition to this, though, as I was going about the world, and especially when my mind wandered a bit, I had more ideas that my mind arrived at. And on top of this, I had more plans and thoughts about the future. Getting rid of one simple device led to these three effects. Why? Noticing this a few years back led me on this long journey to get to the bottom of what it takes to focus in a world of distraction. I pored over hundreds of research papers from front to back. My office, I don't know if you've ever watched one of those crime shows where somebody's solving a murder, and so they have this big Bristol board and there's string attached to papers, attached to memos, attached to newspaper clippings. This is like what the state of my office was. I flew out to meet experts around the world who study focus. I conducted more experiments on myself until the point I had 25,000 words of research notes about why this is the case. How does technology influence our attention and our ability to focus? I want to start with the attention spans that we have. This is how we pay attention to the world around us and how much control we have over our focus. The research around this particular area is fascinating. It turns out that when we two work in front of a computer, especially when our phone is nearby, we focus on one thing for just 40 seconds before we switch to doing something else. And when we have things like Slack open as we're doing some work, this lowers to 35 seconds. But the reason that this is the case is not what we might think after looking at the research. We think the problem is that our brains are distracted. But after looking at the research, this is what I've come to know as a symptom for the deeper problem, which runs much more deeply. It's the root cause of this distraction. It's not that we're distracted, it's that our brains are overstimulated. It's that we crave distraction in the first place. Our brains love these tiny little nuggets of information and social media and email and these things that we do over the course of the day. There's even a mechanism in our mind called the novelty bias, by which our mind rewards us with a hit of dopamine, one of those wonderful pleasure chemicals, the same one that we get when we eat and order a whole medium pizza from Domino's, the same one that we get when we make love. We get that same stimulation when we check Facebook. We get this dopamine coursing through our mind, and so we not only crave distraction, but our mind rewards us for seeking out and finding distraction in the first place. So this is the state of our minds today. We're at this hyper-stimulated state where we bounce around between these bunch of different objects of attention. Same effects as I did during the smartphone experiment. It took about a week for my mind to adjust downward into a newer, lower level of stimulation. And this maps curiously on top of research that shows that it takes our mind about 8 days to fully calm down and rest, like when we're on vacation as an example. Our vacations need to be longer than they are today. But I also noticed that my attention span expanded. I was able to focus even more effortlessly because I wasn't surrounded by fewer distractions, but my mind was so much less stimulated that it did not seek the distraction in the first place. But the fun part were these ideas and plans that struck me that didn't before. And the reason that this is the case is because my mind had a chance to wander more often. There's a great quote that I love that you might be familiar with from J.R.R. Tolkien, where he says that not all those who wander are lost. And the exact same thing is true, it turns out, with regard to our focus, with regard to our attention. If you think back to when your best, most brilliant ideas strike you, you're rarely focused on something. Maybe this morning you were taking a shower, or maybe some morning in the past, and then your mind had a chance to connect several of the constellations of ideas that were swirling around in your mind to create an idea that would never have materialized otherwise if you were focused on something else, on your phone, for example. This is a mode, especially when we do this deliberately, when we deliberately let our mind wander. I call this mode scatter focus. And the research shows that it lets our mind come up with ideas. It lets our mind plan because of where our mind wanders to. This is fascinating. It turns out that when we just let our attention rest, it goes to three main places. We think about the past, we think about the present, and we think about the future. But we think about the past less than we might think. Only about 12% of the time, and often the time we're recalling ideas in these thought-wandering episodes. But the present, which is a much more productive place to wander, we wander to think about the present 28% of the time. And so this is, it's something as simple as you're typing up an email and you can't find a way to phrase something because it's very delicate, maybe it's political. You go and walk to another room, you go to another room of the house, of the office, the solution hits you because your mind had a chance to approach it and prod at that problem from different directions. But here's the thing. Our minds wander to think about the future more than the past and the present combined. Whenever our mind is wandering, we think about the future 48% of the time. This is why when we're taking a shower, we plan out our entire day, even though it hasn't started yet. Right? This is called our mind's prospective bias, and it occurs when our mind wanders. If you're good with math, or maths, I should say, not in Canada anymore, these numbers don't add up to 100. It's because the rest of the time our mind is dull, it's blank, or it doesn't have an idea inside of it that is rooted in time. But whatever it is for you that lets your mind wander, something that's simple, something that doesn't consume your full attention. Mine happens to be something that is not necessarily stereotypic of my age and gender demographic, but I love to knit. Knitting is one of my favorite hobbies. I knit in planes, I knit on trains, I knit in hotel rooms. I was knitting in the hotel room before this event today because it helps calm you down, it helps settle your nerves. And I come up with so many ideas when I knit. I have a notepad next to me. But whatever it is for you, it might be taking that extra long shower. It might be taking a bath, upgrading your shower to a bath so you can soak not just with your body but with your ideas as well. Could be simple. If you're at work, walking from one room to another in the office. Very simple change, but if you don't use your phone during that walk, your mind will go to the meeting that you're about to attend. It'll go to the call that you were just on. It'll wander to the ideas that are circulating, and it'll make you more creative in this way. But when we become less stimulated, when we make our mind more calm, we get the benefits of added productivity and focus and ideas and creativity, but we also live a better life because of it. Thank you so much.